G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting. Good evening, gents.
Good evening.
How are we all?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate.
Now, I think before we get too far into it, we should introduce our guest tonight, all the way from Sweden. Is it Malmö? How do you pronounce
exactly. It? Headquarters Malmö.
I'm just looking on the map. It's near a very big bridge that goes to Copenhagen.
Exactly. I actually live in Copenhagen and work in Malmö.
Oh, there you go. So with us tonight is Carl Gustav Schulin-Howaldt.
Perfect.
If I got that right. Oh, and how Carl managed to get here is we all met Carl at Hillcrest, that place of international connection down there at the Hillcrest Indoor Pistol Range one night, where Carl was along with, was it Eric you were with?
Yes, exactly.
We're leading a Aimpoint night through Beretta, Australia, and we were invited down, and so we had a great time shooting pistols for the first time for me anyway. Well, not the first time, but one of the first times, and also shooting Aimpoint gear on rifle. So it was a great night, and we said at the time that we wanted to catch up with Carl again, but we didn't realise when you're the regional sales manager for Aimpoint, that region is basically the planet Earth, isn't it, Carl?
It's a lot of. I think at the moment I have 28 areas. One of them being Africa, so there's a lot of countries there.
That's it
as well. So and I just got New Caledonia, which is
nice. Newcastle's a great
big
spot.
market, but we also have to pay attention to the smaller markets. So. So I have, let's say, Central Eastern Europe, and then a few ones further away, like Australia, New Zealand, New Caledonia, and Africa. Those are my markets. With a rough
so basically
overview.
everywhere but North America. Is that about right?
North America, Canada, Asia, and a few European countries.
You go. That's a regional sales manager. I'd hate to meet the guy in head office if that's a regional place on that. So, and at the time, I didn't get a chance to. John A. caught up with you down in Melbourne a few weeks later at the Beretta Day. So we really wanted to get you on the channel and talk to you because at the time, I think you said that you hunt for 200 days a year when we were. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
I mean, it depends on who you ask.
And who's listening?
Exactly. But I try to hunt as much as I can because, I mean, that's the reason I have this job. Because I've, since I stopped studying and started working, I've always tried to work with what I love the most, which is hunting, which I've actually succeeded with. I had a short break where I was working for Porsche, the car company, in their marketing in Hong Kong. That was half a year, and then I was back in business. So, but yes, I mean, maybe not 200 days, but somewhere between 100 and 200. I would say. Now I travel a lot with work. But then again, a lot of my customers, they are all wholesalers in the hunting industry, let's say. So a lot of actually our work is also just being with them. And I think you connect much better if you are in a relaxed environment instead of just sitting in a formal conference room. So they actually tend to want to do something, and that's very often hunting. So I get to go and hunt a lot around in the world, which is amazing.
Very jealous. So everyone's just paused for a second.
That's right. We're just kind of processing the days. That's it. That's it. We're just processing the days there and the opportunities. So look, before we get into it, I think we're going to talk a lot about hunting, but before we do that, we should probably give it some context. So as we said, you're the regional sales director for Aimpoint, which basically means that what 45% of the planet Earth is your patch. So you obviously travel a lot. So tell us about where the head office in Sweden.
Exactly. So basically, just a quick sum up about Aimpoint. Aimpoint is a Swedish company owned by a Swedish family, founded by the father of the nowadays owner. He was called Gunnar Sandberg. He founded the company in 1975. And there came a clever engineer who was a sports shooter and had invented the red dot sight by being in the bathroom, shaving in front of a shaving mirror, which is concave. And while shaving, he saw that the light bulb in the back was not moving when he was moving his head. And he thought, this I can use for my sports shooting. So he created the first, let's say, sight, which was a toilet paper tube with a light and a mirror. And then he worked around. And this is where it all came from. There's not a lot of companies which started like that. And he took that to Gunnar Sandberg, who was already a very successful businessman who had some big companies. And he was a very keen hunter. And he said, I think this could be a thing. But it was in 75 they started it, and it was the first red dot in the world. And I think it was a bit too early. People were not really ready for that. So from more or less 75 up to 95, it was red numbers. But Gunnar, he believed in it, so he kept putting money into it. And then after more or less 25 years, some American soldiers, they bought the hunting ones, because everything back then was only made for hunters and sport shooters. Bought the hunting one and then put them on their duty rifles. And there's a very famous picture we love to use, which is General Schwarzkopf from the Gulf War and his protection squad. They all have aim points on their weapons. And this then led to that the military got to know Aimpoint. And from 95, then it took off. I think when the first order came from the US military, we were doing 8,000 Aimpoints a year, and they ordered 80,000.
Wow.
So everything had to be ramped up a lot. But production is in Malmö, which is in the most southern part of Sweden. We also have the head office here. We have the accounting and sales and marketing, and everything is here. Then we have an office in US, which is a subsidiary company called Aimpoint Inc. They do all sales and marketing in US. And then we have a production facility, which is far, far, far up in Sweden, where we only produce sites. So we produce them down here, right next to the office. We have a big production facility. And then we have one up there, and we are on the other side of the road right here. We are building a huge new 3-story building, which is going to be finished next year, where there's also going to be a new production facility. So when I started in the company 4 years ago, we were 150 employees. Now we are just touching 400.
Wow.
Good growth.
Yeah.
So what's the take up like in Australia? Because it's not, I mean, I've got one now. Ian, you've been running an Aimpoint for about a year now.
Yeah, I've had one for
Scott at Beretta actually kind of twisted my arm and said, you got to, we're going to put one on a rifle for you and give it to you, which I've got, which is a lovely rifle, but it runs the Aimpoint. So, I mean, there's been red dots here. They obviously knew about them beforehand, but what's the uptake, do you think, or what is it? Is it growing? Is people interested in them, or is it a very niche market? And obviously, market. I don't mean in the military sense. I mean in the sport shooting sense.
I think it depends a bit on if you divide the commercial market, which we do. So like there's now we have 3 legs. It used to be 2, so it's hunting, sport shooting, and then since lately we call it personal protection or home defense or whatever you want to call it, which was kind of a segment nobody talked about until 2 years ago, at least over here. And now it's an accepted thing to talk about, and there's a lot of people who actually buy products for this purpose. But I think in Australia, I mean, I was there for the first time when I met you guys, and I was there for 4 weeks. And we did the whole training tour, which you also were part of, and we had the Beretta dealer days. And I think the plan is that we are hopefully going to be back in January doing another 2 weeks of training. I think It's the way of let's say the main hunters back here in Europe. They use it for driven hunts, which is not a thing in Australia. So the hunting purpose in that way is not as big as over here. But I think on the sport shooting side, with the pistol side, the acro that you also tested, all of you, that is a thing that we see wherever there are pistols and there are sport shooters. This is really growing super fast because we are still quite early in this matter, because sport shooters have been shooting pistols for many, many years, and they're used to iron sights. So first you have to get people, let's say the first movers, to adapt to it, and then you have to get the important people to like it, and then all the rest are gonna follow. But I think if we walk on the corridors here, you hear a lot of people talking about that in, let's say, 5 years, you won't see a pistol coming without an optic ready mount. So, and I think that you will also see a tendency of a lot of the pistol manufacturers, they're going to deliver pistols already with sights on them. Then, of course, you can take them on and put the one you want. But I think it's not going to be more than 5-6 years. Then most pistols are going to come with a red dot, because it just makes it so much easier to shoot a pistol for people who haven't shot before. If people are very good shots, it's difficult because the way you kind of mount the pistol is slightly different to find the red dot every time. Where when they were used to shooting with iron sights, they aligned the iron sights, and that's a bit different. So for those who shoot a lot, there are some who say, "No, I don't need it. I know my pistol. I know how it shoots." But for all the new ones and the learning curve, shooting a pistol with iron sights versus learning to shoot a pistol with an Aimpoint, a red dot sight, it's so much faster, So I think on that segment, I think it's going to grow a lot. And then also for, like, let's say the guys who want something that they put on a gun and they don't treat the gun very well because they use it for work or for pest control, I mean, we had, after I came back from visiting you guys, there was somebody who had an Aimpoint that dropped the gun out of the helicopter. And the sight is not going to break, but he couldn't find it. So he wouldn't be able to see if it was broken or not. But because we build everything nowadays for the military, and then we kind of carry the products over on the commercial market, the hunter sport shooter gets a military grade product for a lot less money. Of course, we don't say they're cheap, but we think we are the best at doing red dots in the world.
Certainly the durability of those is incredible. I mean, when we were at the dealer day, Carl had me shoot at a target where I think I had 3 shots and it was perfectly zeroed. And then he took the scope off and he threw it up and down the range, dropped it on the concrete, kicked it, threw it around, then mounted it, and it shot in exactly the same spot. So it was amazing. The durability of those scopes is incredible.
Yeah. And I think, for us, it's very important that we do these tours. We travel as much as we do. We go and meet guys like you. We go and meet all the distributors and their sales reps. And then, of course, also all the personnel in the shops, because they are the ones who are helping us to tell this story and to make people realize what it is they're actually having in front of them. Because if they just take an Aimpoint and they take whatever competitor and they say, oh, but this one is like $1,000 and this one is only $300, why shouldn't I just buy it? If you look through them, they're 2 red dots. And then, there comes in the skills of the sales guy who is then actually able to tell the story of, I was at the Beretta dealer days and these crazy Swedish people, they came and they threw it around. And of course, it costs 3 times as much, but you buy it once and your grandchildren are still going to be using it when they start shooting, So that's why we are very dependent on actually being out and making sure that people learn this and are excited to tell the story for us when we're not there ourselves.
It's interesting because I know that, you say, like, it's got that driven game kind of heritage, and that's not something that happens in Australia. But there is for me, there's a lot of similarities between driven game hunting and a lot of the hunting we do in Australia. I mean, Ian used the Aimpoint on a BRX up in the Territory for buffalo.
Yeah,
and that's a driven game setup. It's an Italian rifle on a straight pull meant for it's not a semi-auto, but it's meant to, fast shot, aim point, and he used it on buffalo. And I mean, when I shot buffalo, I was about 20, 30 meters away from him. I don't know about you, Jono. You shot. How far were the ones that you shot?
I was about 75 meters from mine when I first took that first shot.
Yeah. And the pigs were those pigs that, Hogzilla, we didn't see you shoot Hogzilla in, but we heard you shooting. Yep. And then there was the ones at the waterhole. We basically stood on top of those ones. So there's actually a lot of situations where it is kind of like it's far more like that than, say, what you might see if you're watching the American Western Plains hunting, where it's long. They're at distance, they're glassing. Often, especially in state forest hunting in New South Wales, it's often actually relatively close. You are more often than not, you're in 100 meters, and you're looking through pretty dense foliage, and there it is. In fact, last time I was down in state forest, the pigs I saw, they were 40, 50 meters when I saw them, and they didn't see me.
Yeah, and
so there is a lot of similarity,
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I hunt with an indicator, a dog, and which gives me the advantage of being able to hunt outside of the traditional hunting hours of early in the morning and late in the afternoon, where most people in state forest would hunt when the deer become active later in the day or early in the morning. With a dog, you get to flush them off their beds, and you're pretty much at that stage always seeing them as they hop up and decide to get the hell out of there. And most of those animals are within 50 meters. Like they're close. They hold their nerve until you get close enough, and then they bolt. Aimpoint's brilliant for that. Really good.
And I really like that idea that where you can bolt one. We've been quite impressed with that idea where there's one kind of hanging off on a 45-degree angle off the barrel of a scope too. That looks quite interesting.
That's what's happening next. Yeah,
the piggyback setup. Yeah, we also have a lot of people who like that over here. I think it's because hunters and gun people in general are gear freaks, so the more they can buy and put on, the better it is. But I think, as you said, we also, when we were having the training in Adelaide, we had a range where we could shoot very far. So we put up a big metal gong at 300 meters. And then we just told the people, just shoot it with the Aimpoint. And they were like, what? No, we need the big borescope, otherwise we can't shoot it. And I was like, no, just sit there. And when you can't see the gong because of the red dot, you're on it. And then just squeeze the trigger. And then people started hitting, and they were like, whoa, yeah, that's actually true, So I think it's a lot about the industry teaching people that you need a lot of scopes and big magnification. And I mean, big magnified scopes are also very good at if you're hunting in the mountains and you need to be able to identify, let's say you are hunting in Germany or somewhere where you have to know that you have to shoot a 4-year-old A1 stag, then you need magnification to be able to identify what you're shooting at. But if you are hunting where it's for the meat and you don't really care what's on the head, or if it's at such a close distance that you can just see it with your bare eyes, then you don't need more, I mean, if you look at the hunters 100 years ago, they were using iron sights and they were also shooting at 300 meters,
Yeah.
So, and I think there's also a tendency, over here, there's a lot, it's very popular with bow hunting. So we are also trying to teach people that because bow hunting requires a lot of training on top. So if you're already hunting with your shotgun and with your rifle, if you then want to add the bow, then you would have to spend many hours practicing with that. Where instead, if you just said, okay, I'll take the mentality of a bow hunter, but I'm going to go hunt like with a bow with my rifle. So you set a limit. I can't shoot anything further away than 20 meters, then you put your aim point on top, and then you go bow hunting with your rifle, So you have the same, you have to be as good as stalking, but you just shoot it with a rifle, so you're sure when you place the shot, it's going to die fast and humane, but you still have the same challenge that you have to be as good as a hunter as when you are hunting with a bow. So we also have some people who use it in that way.
Yeah, look, I love hunting pigs with shotguns, and that's you've got to get on top of them. It's actually probably about my favourite hunt is hunting pigs in creek beds with shotguns, because it's very fast, it's very close at times, like sometimes a little bit hairy close because they're basically almost stepping on them, but it's like that. So yeah, I'm just, as I said, I've got the Aimpoint now on a BRX, like Ian set up. I've carried it a couple of times up in the blocks already, and often there is a situation where you've got to shoot at distance there, and you can see the limitations of it there. But and other times when you're walking through the heavy stuff, it's actually, it's actually, you can feel this is what it's designed for. It's in that more close quarter, heavy scrub, where a lot of hunting in Australia is just like that. So yeah, I'm really impressed with it. I'm getting more and more used to it. It's just it's a whole different way of target acquisition and aiming. And once you get around that, and I really like that thing that Eric did with the training with the Google eye training he did, where he's got the two eyes and you lift up and all that stuff. So I'm at the range practicing it with it a fair bit.
I have to say the same. Like once I got my confidence with it, I was off and running. It was fine. Unfortunately, I had a new rifle, straight pull rifle, and I had the Aimpoint on top, and we decided to go and target buffalo for its first outing.
That's right.
Which was also my first buffalo experience. So it was a bit unnerving walking around with an undercarriage rifle and an Aimpoint. But when we sighted that one in, we went to the bush range, and just what you're saying, Carl. We were sighting that in. We firstly for 100 meters and then 200. And we were surprised how accurate, so accurate it was at 200 meters. We just dialed down the dot illumination settings so that we could see the sight of the target.
Target, yeah.
And we were inside an MOA at 200 meters. We were really impressed with it. So then, that's fine, target to target. I was just lucky, I think, that it was pigs that popped their heads up first. So I was able to get a few rounds away and get used to it before the buffalo. But magic, such a good combination.
That was, I often think about that trip, that first afternoon where we saw that herd and we were crawling over those ant columns. And I saw that big herd buffalo and I went, I'm not sure if I can make this shot.
Well, I think, what would you do now though, Mark? I think now, knowing what we know about the buffalo experience, I think I would have been a lot quicker to get the first shot off.
I would have shot more quickly, but because that, I think that's what it was. I was waiting for the perfect shot, and when they did that, that quintessential buffalo stuck its nose up in the air, and so the brooms went flat, and it looked down its nose.
Yeah.
And there was the boiler room, and I was thinking, I'm going to stick this Barnes in there, and then it moved, and that tree trunk of a leg got in the way, and I went, I don't know if I can break that shoulder. I don't know. And it was
massive animal.
It was
huge.
5 o'clock.
For your knowledge too, mate.
5 o'clock in the night. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We're on that plane that never, next to us. We just crossed that plane that didn't look like it had an ending to it.
Smashed by the sun. Yeah.
And it's smashed by the sun. I don't know if I want to chase this thing across that plane. So I can't see the end of that country. So yeah, it was I probably would have lit it up quicker and said, just everyone get into it.
Yeah, well, we were probably 20 kilometers walk in a 40-degree day, facing into this, or the sun was facing into us as we were walking across this never-ending plain. The thing about the country up there was, if you think about, this vast savanna that's in front of you, you can also see a million ant mounds that stand 6 foot tall. So, and they're, as wide as me at the base, which is reasonably wide. And you're trying to pick out a herd of buffalo through all of this, right? You can see them through this, layers and layers and layers of spiky ant mounds, and it's just, you'd think, there's 30 buffalo on an open plain, but you can't bloody see them. They're there. And you can see horn, an ear, a foot, a tail. hard.
And again, I didn't, I knew how big they were until I saw them, and then I realized how big they were. Because remember we saw that cow. I saw a cow and went, oh, there's a cow there. Then I saw this thing that kind of like dwarfed the cow and went, well, that's buffalo.
Oh.
They were just.
I think we walked into the biggest buffalo in the area.
Yeah, that's right. It made the cow look like a dog, Holy moly, and there was 30 of them, and they were huge animals, and they're just looking at us, and they know we're here.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So
anyway, good to have the gear.
So let's talk about some of your hunting, Carl. That's what we really want to know about. We want to know, as you said, between.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done with tech. Sorry, Mark.
There you go.
I wanted to explain a bit more. A couple of things. One, the difference between Aimpoint and the various other red dots that are out there, because you guys have got some pretty unique technology. It's not a secret. Well, you're not going to tell us the secrets, even if they are there. But there's something quite unique about Aimpoint that makes it as good as it is, and as strong and hardy as it is. So I'm just keen for the listeners to understand why I'm paying 3 times more. And my second question is just talk to us a little bit more about that mounting option we were talking about. When you're mounting on a scope, what's involved with that? How easy is it to take off, put on anytime I want? Like, is it as easy as that, or is it more tricky? Curious.
If we start with the first question, so basically, as I also mentioned before, we nowadays, and since the last, since late 90s, early 2000s, we developed everything we do is developed by we have around now 85 engineers who are sitting and constructing all our products, and they're all made for the military market, and mostly they come from requests from special forces who say we need this for this, and that's how the process starts. And then we try to create the products that are wanted on these markets, because we kind of see that if you have a good foot in with all the special forces around the world, they are kind of the trendsetters in their world, meaning that if the special forces are using it, it's going to be X amount of years before the big armies also want to have the same as them. So basically, all the aluminium and everything we use is military grade, and it's tested for the military. What we then do is that we take, let's say, if we compare the Acro C2, which is the smallest, the pistol one, which you can also use for, actually have it here now, we're developing new material, but it's basically this little Acro. Yep. That comes in a P and in a C. And the P is the military version, and the C is the commercial version. And there are only technical specifications that are different. For example, with the C, you only have 2 night vision settings. With the P, you have 4 night vision settings. But for anybody, let's say really anybody, it doesn't really make any difference. Then, of course, the military ones we test harder. They're built by the same people, the same components. We just test the military ones harder. But so this, the Acro C2, you can dive down to 5 meters if you would like to. The P2 down to 25. I'm quite sure if we took a C and we dived down to 25 meters, nothing would happen with it, and that's what you get, And the military ones are more expensive because we test them harder and they're bought in bigger quantities, where the commercial ones are a bit cheaper because we don't have to spend as much time on testing them. So basically what the hunter and sport shooter gets is a military grade sight for less money. And I mean, one good feature is, for example, that all the Aimpoint sights, the commercial ones, you have 50,000 hours on the battery, which means 5 years. So when you turn it on, it's going to go on setting 6 or 7. And if you don't do anything, it will stay there on for 5 years. And then after 5 years, you know that the intensity is slowly going to go down, and you see, okay, now it's time to change. It's not like one day it's just out. So basically you can turn it on, put it in your gun cabinet, take it out whenever you want to go hunting. And after 5 years, you will see, okay, now I have to go to setting 11, where I was normally on setting 9, and then it's time to swap the battery. And I would say in 95% of all our products, it's the little flat the little flat battery like this one, the little
The
2032, which you can get anywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can get it anywhere, and they just last really, really long. I mean, I had my first Aimpoint was a Comp C3, and I had the battery in there for 11 years before I swapped it, because I turn it on when I start hunting season around 1st of October, and when it's finished 31st of January, I turn it off, and then it's just in there, and it lasted 11 years before I had to switch the battery. So that's also a very good thing, that it's always on, and you don't have to think of that it's suddenly just when you're out, because I know a lot of guys who hunt with scopes that also have an illuminated red reticle, and suddenly when they are out hunting on this stand, it's just gone, And you only do that once if you're on a driven hunt, let's say in Hungary or Germany or wherever, and it's an amazing hunt, and you only have this red dot, and you come out and suddenly the battery just goes. There's no crosshair, nothing you can use. So you're basically just standing there, missing the opportunity of a lifetime, because the product was not trustable. So,
Carl,
that's why we are more expensive.
Is there something unique about the Aimpoint that means that wherever that red dot is, it doesn't matter where you're looking, it remains in exactly the same place? The whole toilet paper light bulb moment.
Exactly.
Is that unique to Aimpoint? I thought that was really unique to you guys.
I mean, we talk about being parallax free. That's what you are mentioning. And I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of producers that state that they are, but if you took them out on the range and you would kind of compare them, you will actually see that there's really a big difference between paying for a premium product, which is going to last generations, and paying for a much cheaper product, which first of all is not living up to what they're telling they will. And secondly, I mean, the lifespan is so short. So if you took let's say the cheaper competitors and you compared the parallax, you will really see that they are not as mentioned. Where if you take the Aimpoint, let's say the Acro or the H2, the micro, and you put it on a window and you try to move it around, you're going to see that the dot is just staying exactly in the middle. And that is because it's a little LED, which is thrown up on two lenses in front. And between the two lenses, depending on the side, there's X amount, up to like 30 different coatings. They are made so they let all light through except red light. And the red light is then what you see a reflection of. And that is why no matter how you move it, the red dot is going to be there. So even if it looks like the red dot is in the bottom and you have to suddenly be super fast because you turn around a corner and there came the buffalo, if the red dot is in the bottom, as long as you put the red dot exactly in the face of the buffalo, it's still going to be game over for that buffalo, Yeah. And that's a very important thing when you're hunting on fast-moving targets, because you don't have a lot of time, and you just have to, just look at the target, just bring up the dot to where you're looking, and when the dot is where you look, you just pull through and pull the trigger, which is a very big benefit for hunters and also for the sport shooters that have to be fast, let's say IPSC shooters, but also, let's say, all our military customers, for them it's a bit more important than for us hunters, because they actually depend on that it shoots where they put it and that it always works.
Yeah. So without laboring the point too much, I think what I was trying to make sure that I explain, we've got a lot of new hunters and people that are interested in equipment, the difference between what you're talking about and a traditional scope, other than the zoom, obviously. With a traditional scope, you've got to get the perfect sight picture. If you don't have that perfect sight picture, you're going to be slightly out. With the Aimpoint,
exactly.
Doesn't matter how you're looking through that scope, if that dot's on the animal, it's on the animal. That's pretty cool.
Exactly.
Love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And to the second question, the piggyback. So that's also a thing that came from the military side, because that's been a thing there for many years. But now we have a lot of sport shooters who shoot, for example, PRS, where they're shooting from everything from 10 meters up to 800 meters. They put it on top and they use the red dot as a reference to change targets, so they can leave the big scope, let's say, on 25 times magnification, or 30 or whatever. And instead of having to dial up and down, they just lift the head with the red dot, go to the next target, and they go in and they can shoot immediately. So that's one way of applying it. Another way is just for the hunters, They either put it on top or they put it 45 or 90 degrees on the side. And then if you're on a stand where you can shoot far, but you also have the opportunity that something is going to come super close and super fast, you can use, let's say, the big scope for everything above 50 or 100 meters, and then you've sighted in the Aimpoint at 50, so you know, okay, everything from 0 to 50 at full speed. I'm just going to either look up or tilt the gun, and then I use the Aimpoint out to 50, and from 50 onwards, I can use the scope if I have better time, and they're still standing.
Which position do you think is best for the hunting setup? On top or 45?
I'm actually going to see. I have it. I just have
Completely
one lying
selfish
in
questions
another
here.
room.
I'm looking forward to setting mine up, and I just want to know how to do it.
So I've shot both. So the first year I tested it, it was sitting 45. But the thing is, first of all, zeroing the two, so the scope and the Aimpoint, when it's 45, is a bit tricky for people who are not working in the industry, because suddenly the rotary is not working XY, so you have to go like this, so you have to go a bit up and then a bit in and a bit up. So the zeroing part is a bit more tricky. And then, when you start tilting a firearm that you shoot, the impact is going to differ depending on the degrees of your tilt, So what I saw is I mounted it on my rifle, and on some driven hunts, I had it 45. So when I was shooting the scope, I was shooting straight. And when I had to use the Aimpoint on running targets, I was tilting it like this, So I was looking perfectly through the Aimpoint. But my tilt, because I only put it and I did a bit of practice, but not a lot. So if your tilt is not 100% repeatable, the angle is going to be different, which means that at 50 or 75 meters, there's going to be different in impact, which means if you tilt it a bit too much or a bit too little, the shot is going to move further back into the animal. So I unfortunately had some shots where I thought I was perfectly on it, pulled the trigger, and they were sitting quite far behind, which is a thing that why I'm not the biggest fan of having it 45 degrees. I've now shot it since then for 2 years sitting on top, because I think, then people say, yeah, but it's super important to have cheek contact with your gun and that you have a well-mounted gun. But nowadays, at least here in Europe, in let's say almost all the countries, silencers are allowed, and most people use them also on driven hunts. So you have a short barrel with an over barrel silencer, which means that it's not going to be super long and hanging around very nose heavy. So you get it in there, you have a silencer on, and with the silencer, even if you're shooting, let's say 30-06 or 300 Win Mag, there's no recoil anymore, So it's not like you're going to lose the sight picture when you shoot it. So even with a big caliber for driven hunts, you will be perfectly able to just lift your head, not have cheek contact, have a good contact in your shoulder, lift your head, and then just for the running shots out to 40, 50 meters, whatever, you can make perfect shots this way. And this way, it doesn't change any impact at all. The rifle is going to shoot exactly the same. And so I like it on top. But it's very different. I mean, if you ask in the office, there's going to be 5 out of 10 are 45 and 5 are on top.
My confused face.
Go on top, mate.
I'm not the gun setter uppery guy, right? Guys,
I'm just thinking.
In Ian speak, what did the silencer and short barrel have to do with that?
Recoil.
I don't have that. I don't have a silencer or a short barrel.
Mate.
No, so basically, if you would have, let's say you shoot a 300 Win Mag with no muzzle brake or no silencer, you have quite a heavy recoil, And that means if you're not perfectly in the gun, it's going to be very uncomfortable shooting like this with your head up. You're going to have, and everything is going to be going around. But because you now have a silencer, there's no recoil. So even with not having perfect cheek contact to take the kick, it's not a problem.
We don't have those, unfortunately. So I'm talking about a BRX and 30-06 with a Predator 8 on top and then an Aimpoint on top of that. You're telling me I'm gonna shoot that monster big, but I'm gonna get a sore shoulder.
No, I would
probably
put
more of a
a
sword
muzzle
neck.
brake.
We're not allowed muzzle brakes.
Also not muzzle brakes.
Yes, you are.
We can have muzzle brake.
Oh, muzzle brake. Yeah, okay, sorry. Moderators are not that muzzle brake.
Yeah. No. Muzzle brake. I would for sure because before the development of silencers over here became really good, I was shooting muzzle brake because I always wear double ear protection, so I have some in-ears and on-ears. And especially with a muzzle brake, it's really important. And I know there's a lot of people who say, yeah, but it's only one shot and so on and so forth. But if you're unlucky, just one shot with a muzzle brake, let's say 30-06. I have a friend, he shot 2 shots at a roebuck, forgot his ear protection, didn't really think of it, and went out. 4 months, his ear was hurting. He went to the ear doctor and he lost 15% on the one ear, with 2 shots. So it's really important. But the muzzle brake takes away the recoil, so you have a much better sight picture of what's exactly happening when you shoot the gun. So I would put a muzzle brake on yours and then mount it on top, because then you have the same effect. Just remember ear protection.
I'm not sitting next to you at the range.
So much to think about, when you're setting this stuff up. I mean, I'm trying to consider the dog, because the muzzle brake brings the noise back to the dog.
That's right. Well, it tends to punch it that way.
Yeah, it depends. There's a lot of different ones. Some punch it out like this. Some punch it back into you. Some punch it straight out. You can also get some that are only up and down. There's thousands of different versions, but that's another thing. I mean, if you have your hunting companion with you always, your dog, then again, silence is just an amazing invention.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, not a thing in Australia. No.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I want to hang on a 9.3 like that. I don't want to be shooting a 9.3 like that.
Hard.
Crick on the neck.
Dog won't be coming into the territory, so
that's true.
It'll be a good territory setup.
And I mean, in terms of what we talked about, you asked about the mounting and so on and so forth. It's you get the ring. You can get it for either now, just to show the normal Picatinny, then the ring. Wait a second. I'm just going to see if I have it here.
Just going to get you to drop it in a post pack.
Ship 2.
I have. I don't have it here. I have. Yes. No, somebody stole it. Yeah, people steal everything. But so basically you get them in 30 and 34 millimeter rings.
Yep.
Which depends on your scope. I know you also have smaller scopes, but that's let's say the standards here in Europe, and that's why we make them those. And you get it either with the Picatinny rail on top, or also with the acro interface, which is this one. So basically not as big, but the interface is this one, so it fits to the acro. So that's just more or less the same size blade as this one, just with the acro. So you can either choose to put the acro, which is without the mount and the flip-ups, it's only 60 grams. So it's super light, so it's not going to add a lot of weight to your setup. And you just mount it, and if you mount it with a screw, it's fixed. You don't touch it. And if you want to have the possibility to take it on and off, so you only have the ring sitting all the time, you could mount a Picatinny ring and then a quick detachable mount like this. So you basically just have the lever, you open and close it, and then you can take the side on and off for the hunts that you want to carry a piggyback, and for the other ones you only have the ring sitting on the scope, so you have 60 grams less.
And you find the accuracy is fine, taking it on and off. I know it's designed to do it. Master question.
That's what Jonah also said, what we showed at the Beretta days. So basically, with a quick detachable, as long as you remember to put it in the same rail on the Picatinny, and you always remember to push it forward and down when you mount it, then it's going to keep 0. But even with one of those, which only has a screw, like this one, it's just a normal Torx 10.
Yeah.
We don't recommend it, but as Jonas saw, as long as you close it with the same tension, then it should hold the 0.
It was dead on. No, I didn't even torque wrench it. Carl did it by hand. There's no torque wrench.
So what we say is, if you don't have a Torx tool with you, you have this Aimpoint, the best tool you get with all our products.
This is really precision. Bend it till it twists.
Exactly. Yeah, right. And then you see when it starts flexing, it's 2 Newton, and when it starts really flexing, you're at 3.
Yeah,
and so you don't need that actually. Yeah. It's of course best to have, but if you don't have it, you can use Eric's little trick with the twist.
Yeah, and as I said,
kind of know how much it is.
As I said, Carl did that on the range, and it was dead on. It was amazing.
I'll have to talk to my dealer, because that little precision tool didn't come with my Aimpoint.
Oh, I got one of them in here.
Yeah, and otherwise, I'm sure you can call Scott. He will have a few spare.
He'll sort me out. Yeah,
I think I actually got a spare one myself.
That's what yours is. That's what Ian's is. Yeah.
No, I think I've got a spare one. I've my gun gear. I've got all sorts of things in there. I think I've picked up one along the way somewhere. I've got a spare one.
Oh, They were my technical questions that were completely self-centered. Anyone else got any before we look into actual hunting stuff?
I do, and it's more of a, I suppose, a tip that I learned from Carl at the dealer day was the best thing you can do is the Aimpoint zeroing target. I don't know if you remember, Ian, when we went to the bush range, how we struggled to zero. Aimpoint actually have a zeroing target that makes your life so much easier. We used it, and what a difference it makes. It really does. And Carl, those are available on the website, aren't they? To download.
Exactly. You just go on aimpoint.com, and you, in the search, you can just write zeroing targets, and there's a target for every site. And the difference is that the small squares, they are made so they fit the clicks, because the clicks are different on every. So the Aqua has one which is like maybe 30 millimeters, then there's one which is 20 millimeters. So not knowing exactly, and then you don't have to know, it just tells you at 25, at 50, and at 100 meters what each square is in terms of clicks, and then you just put it up, and it just makes life so much easier. And it's again about, they were made because in the whole process of building trust, we want people to have the best first impression. And if you come out and you have a normal target and there's no info, and you bought the product but no hunter reads the instruction manual, at least a lot I know don't, so you don't really know how many clicks it is, and then you start shooting 4 or 5 shots, and then you want to adjust and you don't know how, so you try, and then you get too far, and then you have to go back. With the Aimpoint zeroing target, you basically just, the big fat ring which you see on the target is for bore sighting. So you start bore sighting it to save some ammunition, then you put 3 shots, then the 2 lines that are on the target, you can basically use them to count into the middle. You count the squares, and then the information tells you if you have to say 1 square is 2 clicks, or 1 square is 1 click, or 2 squares is 1 click. And then you basically just count the squares, do your math, and then you put the dot where you need it, take another 3 shots, and within 6 shots, you should be able to have it perfectly zeroed. And this is all part of having a very good first impression of the product, so people trust it and they get good friends with their Aimpoint.
Yeah, when I didn't use the Aimpoint target because I don't even follow those kind of instructions. But I think it was 4 shots, and at 50 I went, okay, that's perfect. So then I went and I did that. I think Eric told me, sight it in like it's a rifle, close one eye until you, and then go from there. And was it 50? It was right where it wanted to be. Went down to the 100. Slight adjustment, and then I was shooting it offhand at 100, and it was fantastic. I said to Ian at the time, I wish rifle scopes were as easy to set up as that, because I do a lot of reviewing of rifle scopes, and the best I can get down to about 11 rounds to get it, so you can start getting some performance out of it. But with that, I was just stunned how it was that easy. I think, as I said, it's 4, and I was away. So.
And that's the only time you should shoot an Aimpoint with one eye, is when you zero it, because then you are actually aiming. Yeah. But otherwise, it's always, as you guys learned, both eyes open, 100% focus on the target, and just bring the dot to where you're looking. That's the best way of using it, because if you start shooting an Aimpoint with one eye closed, you lost already, because it's such a small tube and you sit there. No, that's not how it's meant to be used.
Okay. So we're going to talk about hunting now, or any more questions?
Get onto the hunting.
Okay. Tell us about your hunting. Tell us about some of your hunting, Carl. So tell us about hunting in. So what kind of hunting is available in Sweden? Let's start with Sweden. I'm looking at the map.
Sweden.
I'm planning to visit.
Yeah. You should come. And this is actually from now and the next 4 months is the best time to visit in terms of hunting, because this is our main season. So. In terms of Sweden, it's really a hunting mecca, because you have a very healthy population of wild boars. There are roe deers, there's fallow deers, there's red deers, there's mouflon, and of course we have moose as well. And in terms of birds, in Sweden you're still allowed to release ducks and pheasants for, like, let's say, traditional English style pheasant and duck shoots. And then at the same time, if you go a bit more north, there are all the birds that live in the forest, so capercaillie and black grouse, which you can then also hunt with pointing dogs. And then more north, you come up in the Swedish highland similarities. and there you have this rype, it's called, so it's kind of a grouse. And these are also amazing to hunt. So there's so many different, and of course you also have the, what are they called? The reindeers. You also have them up north. So I mean, the possibilities of hunting are endless down here. So down here in the southern part, the biggest hunts are the driven hunts. So driven hunts for wild boars and red deer and fallow deer and moose. We don't have as much moose down here. You have to go like an hour more north to be able to shoot the moose. These start around 1st of October and go in.
It's like,
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go home and made it's a minimum 3 hours. I mean, that's just up the road.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's
That's
right.
big. It's a bit different with the distances. I mean, you can drive really far. I mean, there's some. I'm gonna go to a moose hunt in 2 weeks, which is up in Aarhus, it's called. So if I had to drive from Malmö up there, it's 14 hours drive. That's a bit more relatable for you guys. That's like going for the groceries for you. But that's exactly. So that's what we do now. So now the duck hunt started mid August, and then the moose hunt just started last week up in the northern part of Sweden, and down here more southern it's going to start mid-October. And then we have the driven hunts, where it's basically normally 3 drives around 12 to 20 people, and they then get divided out to high stands, and then there's a team of beaters, which is, let's say, 10 to 20 guys with dogs, and they then walk through the different drives, and the game that is in there wants to go away and passes the stands that are standing there, and then you have different quotas. So in terms of management, it's the landowner who decides what to shoot. There are only certain species like red deer and moose that is determined by quotas from the government. So the government tells you, depending on the size of your land, you can shoot X amount of calves, females and males, and the males have to be these sizes. And but with pigs, wild boars, and with fallow deer and roe deer, it's up to the landowner to determine how much they want shot.
So I was just going to ask, when you're talking about up north, is that closer to Finland or Norway? I'm just looking at the map, mate.
Norway.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that way.
So it's just up, and then when Sweden, Norway kind of goes that way, it's closer to Norway than to the water.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
So it's in the.
You have a favorite game that you like to chase at home? We'll get into the overseas stuff, but later on, is there you're a deer man, or do you prefer the hogs? Or
no, I mean it depends. I think it's all into the seasons. So in Denmark, where I'm from, we start the roebuck hunt the 16th of May. So around there, the spring, it's all about the roebucks. And then 1st of September, the stag starts, so you can shoot fellow stags and red stags. And then the bird hunting also starts 1st of September. So when we get there, we forgot everything about roebucks. Then it's only the stags and it's the birds. And then from, let's say, mid-October, it's the big bird shoots, the pheasant, the driven shooting for that. And then from November on, kind of, you have all the driven hunts for. In Denmark, we don't have any wild boars, but then it's driven hunts for fallow deer, red deer, and roe deer. And over here in Sweden, it's then the wild boars and all the others. But I mean, it's I just love hunting, so it doesn't really matter for me what it is. As long as I'm hunting, I'm happy.
So different because we don't have the seasons anymore. We used to have some sort of season with deer in state forest, but it's gone now. It's pretty much you go, and that was only
that's it. So is there you said you live in Denmark, is that right? Did you say?
Yeah, exactly. I live in Copenhagen, and my father is German. My mom was half German, half Danish, but I'm born and raised in Denmark. So I'm Danish. I only work in Sweden. I mean, I spend a lot of time over here when I'm in the office, and also hunting in Sweden is quite extensive as well. But yeah, I'm Danish in the terms that I've born and raised. On paper, I'm more German than Danish, but In reality, I'm Danish.
There you
German
go.
Dane living in Copenhagen, working in Sweden, just to confuse everyone.
What's the
I was
commute
just
like?
thinking, well, as I said, if that bridge is you don't get to work if that bridge isn't working.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, no. So days if there's very strong storms, they close the bridge, and then I'm working from home.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask Carl,
Also,
what is
you obviously
the?
had. Sorry.
I was going to say from a hunting perspective, is there a education piece that you have to go through, training or tests or anything like that to be able to hunt in Sweden or Denmark?
Yeah. Yes. So in all European countries, let's say except UK, you have to do your hunting license. And it's very different in the different countries. So in Sweden, it's not that difficult. You can do it like in 2 intensive weekends, and then you have a shooting test where you have to shoot with shotgun and with rifle, and then you pass your exam, and that's once in a lifetime. In Denmark, it's as well. You can do like 2 or 3 weekend intensive course where you have to do a lot of studying before, and then you have the different lectures on weapon handling and shooting and so on. And then in Denmark, you take a theoretical part, you take practical part, which is like you have to be able to distance different animals and say if you can shoot this at this distance, so they're different signs out in the forest, and you go on this trail, and then he asks you, would you shoot at this goose or pheasant or whatever, and you have to say yes or no. And on the written exam, you can have 4 mistakes out of 40 questions, and that's about everything from gun laws to weapons to recognizing animals to seasons, all the kind of that. And then after that, you have to do a shooting test where you have to hit 6 out of 18 clays, so some flying away, and then 2 different towers from the side, and you have to hit 2 at each of the positions. And then if you want to hunt with rifle, after that you have to do a rifle exam where you shoot on a roebuck target at 100 meters, but you can use, like, if you have a bipod or if you have a hunting bag you want to shoot off, it's perfectly fine. And if you then compare, let's say, the Scandinavian ones, in Germany, it's kind of a secondary gymnasium exam. So you have 5 exams, and you can either do it so you take every evening for a year, you do the courses, or you do an intensive 3 weeks. But then it's like you go to a school where you live at the school, and for 3 weeks you learn and you train. And then after that you have 5 exams. And I mean, I tell you, there are no hunters that are better educated than the Germans, because they have to know all the animals when they get small ones, all the diseases they can have, all the trees in the forest, all gun laws, everything about all the guns they could potentially shoot. It's crazy. And they also have to recognize the ages of the different animals. So in Germany, you can come on a driven hunt where they say you're only allowed to shoot 4 to 5 year old fellow stacks of class A1. And then there's A1 down to D5. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to shoot any fellow stacks because I have no clue if that's an A1 or a D4 or whatever. But they know that, So it's very different. And I think it is, that's really good. It's also the threshold for people to join the hunting world is much bigger, because first of all, it's quite expensive for them to do these courses. And second of all, you need a lot of time and you actually have to learn a lot, So, but they're very well educated. But in Denmark, it's really popular. We luckily have a TV show which is called like Kill and Cook, kind of, if you translate it to English. And it's a chef, a crazy Danish chef, and then a nature guy who's a hunter. And they have now for 11 years, there's like 6 to 10 episodes every year. And they basically travel around the whole world, try to shoot different. They were also in Australia shooting water buffalo. And if they get it, they cook it outside and they live in tents and so on and so forth. And if they don't, they have to eat some, let's say, punishment animal. So they take some horrible animal nobody wants to eat and have to cook that if they don't shoot it. And it's so popular. It's really helped hunting gain popularity in Denmark. So we have really an increase of new hunters in Denmark, which is amazing.
We could take that on.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
that. Lose the slam, eat a dirty fox.
That's the old joke about eating cockatoos. You put it, you get the cockatoo, you put in a pot with a rock, and you boil it for 3 hours, and you throw away the cockatoo and eat the rock. So yeah,
it's so good to have someone new to tell you jokes. I love it.
That's it, mate. So yeah, so I like that idea. I think that's there's something in that one.
I'll send you a link. You can have it. It's on YouTube with subtitles, so you can see kind of the concept. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. So with your work,
is there much hunting in Denmark then?
Yeah, there's also a lot of hunting. I mean, we are actually the country in the world with the highest hunting pressure per square centimeter of land, because it's a very small country. And even though we are only 5.8 million, we are still 200,000 hunters. And if you compare it to, let's say, Germany, there are 80 million people and they are 400,000 hunters.
Oh, wow.
So it's very big. So we have big pheasant and duck shoots, and then there's a lot of small game like rabbits is also very popular, and then of course all the rodeos and red deers and fellow. We also have some areas where there's sika as well.
So if you're a visitor to Sweden, how do you what's your requirement for hunting, or do you know that? I mean, what if someone went there?
You would have to get a Swedish hunting license, but that's basically if you have a hunting license from your own country, you go online. It's very modern, and you just put in your birth date and your name, and then you pay. That would be around 80 Australian dollars, I think, and then you have a Swedish hunting license for 1 year, and that's only valid if you have your own valid hunting license with you. That means that if you got stopped by the police, they would ask you, and then you would show your Swedish, and they would say, "Oh, can we please see your native one?" And then you would show your Australian equivalent license, and then it would be fine. That's also the license we will be making for guests. So when the guys from Red Australia or some other clients were hunting with us, we make them Swedish guest hunting license, and then they're allowed to shoot. And we make an insurance which covers 10 million euros. So they're also insured when they are hunting here, if anything unfortunately should happen. And then they're good to go. This insurance can even cover, if they would shoot a pheasant that landed on a car and broke the windshield, the insurance would pay for a new windshield.
Public liability insurance, yep.
And then, of course, in terms of traveling with guns, in Europe, we have something called the European Firearms Passport, which is a passport where you put in all the guns you want to travel with. And then there's a picture of you looking like a passport, and then you have all the pages with the different serial numbers of the guns. And this you just show when you fly, and they check that the numbers in the passport and on the gun are the right ones, and then you're off. So it literally takes, let's say, maybe half an hour longer than flying with normal luggage. So it's really not complicated.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
So anything from you guys about hunting in Sweden?
Not particularly Sweden, no. But I was just interested in all of the rigor and the effort that goes into getting licenses, and the training that you were talking about. Some of the other countries having. There must be a really interesting view of the Australian hunter compared to the European hunter. What is that? I mean, you're well travelled, all right, and you're not going to offend anyone, so be as open as you like. But you've travelled here, you've travelled to lots of other parts of the world. What is the perception of Australia as a hunting travel location, and the people that are here that are part of that pastime?
I think there's as many views of Australian hunters as there are people, but I think one perception is, let's say, from my point of view, when I hadn't been there and I had only got information about hunting in Australia through when I was working. I had a hunting agency, so we were sending people to Australia to hunt, and that was kind of, let's say, the hunting of your deers, the water buffaloes, and that was kind of a similar, let's say, perception of the hunting as in Africa, kind of, you go and stalk the buffaloes and so on and so forth. And then I think when you get there and you go in a hunting shop and you see the amount of ammunition people buy these metal boxes with 1,000 shots in them. And you talk to you guys and travel around, and you kind of get an idea of that. For a lot of people, a big part of hunting is more pest control. And then, of course, I met the guy. What is he called? Tweed something. The Australian guy who's also at the Beretta Deal Days. He's sponsored by Beretta.
Oh, Tweed Hunter. Yeah,
Tweed Hunter. Yeah, exactly. And when you talk to him, and it's a lot about stalking deer and so on and so forth. There, I think a lot of people can see themselves in what he's doing. But when I was there, I was just quite amazed about how, like other manufacturers, ammunition and so on, they really look into manufacturing products only for Australia to accommodate your kind of shooting. So when I was there, I got a different point of view. I mean, I was going hunting with Nathan Armstrong from Beretta and one of his friends, and I had just taken the lightest, most summery hunting clothes I had because I couldn't pack a lot. I was gone for 6 weeks, but I just basically had, I don't know, a green shirt and some Herkila trousers and some boots. And when I came out, both Nathans was like, "Look at this guy! What is he wearing?" Because it's not a thing. And I mean, if you walk into an Australian hunting shop compared to walking into a Danish one, I mean, the clothing is, let's say, 60% back here in Europe, because it's all about the things around it, and you would never just go hunting in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, where when I was over there, I kind of got the feel that when you go hunting or shooting, whatever you do, you just go in and grab the gun and you're wearing whatever you were just wearing, doing the things you were doing before. So there's that kind, which I don't think a lot of people outside realize, that it's also a lot about that, pest controlling and actually just shooting. And then, of course, there's the side with Tweed hunting and where you go hunting, and that's very similar to what we do back here, or what you would expect of when you go to Africa. You have your gear, you put it on, and then you go stalking. So I think there's so many different views of what Australia is in terms of hunting. Of course, from the people who've actually been there, and just from the people who only heard the tales and saw videos and whatever. So yeah.
Thank you. I think it's always interesting to hear what people think of other parts of the world. We always look further afield. It's funny, when I started hunting in Australia, I love it, but I was always looking for that next overseas trip. And it's only in recent years that I've really come to understand how great the hunting is here. So many different species to chase, from one end of the country to another. Take the deer and the buffalo that we keep talking about away, obviously the staples, pigs. But then there's donkeys and there's camels and there's all sorts of things out there that people chase. So it is a great place to be able to hunt. But people do have this draw to Africa and Alaska and places like that as well. So interesting perspective from the other side of the world.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, you mentioned in the beginning when we were talking about that you miss seasons. I think there's a lot of European hunters who envy you guys, and let's say the guys in New Zealand, that you can basically just go whenever, wherever, and not shoot whatever, but there's a lot less rules. But here, everything is managed. We can only hunt this from this, and roebucks in Denmark, 16th of May to 15th of July, then it's over. Then you can hunt them again from 1st of October to 31st of January. So there's so many rules, and there are some longer periods, let's say in the spring, summer, where there's not a lot of hunting, where people, let's say the crazy people like us, we are really waiting for the season to kick in again.
It seems from an external person's perspective that you are so focused around those seasons, that you have the season and you're driven towards it, and then you switch you on the next one, without having those seasons, because we can just pick the rifle up and go, I guess. We don't seem to have that same driven focus. Now, some do, because they're very focused on Samba only or something like that. It's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually wrote a little bit about that a couple of months ago. I actually, in a way, it's funny how you say like they're envious of European hunters are envious of Australia because I actually sometimes a little envious of what I see. I've hunted in England and I've met people like yourself, and especially in the States, because I think in many ways you have a better appreciation of the animal. And I think
your government.
Well, certainly your government does, but I think individual hunters have a greater. Well, I don't know if it's a greater connection, but I think they have in many instances they're more appreciative of the game species that we have in Australia. Whereas I think if it's just there, it's just there type thing. I think that's something that I've felt. Like there's more. You can have more of a conversation about shot placement and things like that because there's I suppose it's because simply, as you said, you've got a very small window to be successful. So you probably, you go, okay, this is it. I've got, my roe deer season is this long, so I've got to get right. I've got to be right into it, or I miss the opportunity for another year. And I often notice that when I talk to friends in the States and things like that. They really prepare for that very short window because that's all it is. If you don't get it right, then it's next year. And I know guys who are quite successful as hunters, but they'll tell you they might go 3-4 years without getting a decent sized elk or something like that because it's just, it's a small opportunity. And if things don't go right, then they don't go right, and then you're back to the drawing board. So I actually I have some envy for that kind of approach as well.
That's true. I think, as you say, you appreciate more. I mean, I can only look at, for example, when we hunt moose in Sweden and in Norway, because up there, they're so far between. I mean, we had a lady who was hunting in our hunting club up in Norway where we hunt moose, and she was hunting, let's say, 2 weekends every year, 3 days, from 7 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the evening for 3 days, 3 weekends every year for 10 years before she shot her first moose. And when you then finally have this moose showing up, and it's also the right one that you can actually shoot, and it all, you manage to place a good shot and it goes down and everything is fine, then of course, I mean, the appreciation of the whole happening is just different if you could go out and shoot 10 moose every day.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think I always reckon hunting comes down to seconds, and that's what it is. That those 10 years of what'd you say, 3 weeks, so nine days, so 90 days comes down to seconds, and I think that's what it's really all about, those seconds. So and I think if it's always there and you can just kind of jump and jump. I mean, I can go hunting now. Literally, I could be up there and waiting for the dawn. I've got a place that's 90 minutes away, and I've got access to it whenever I want. And the animals on there aren't controlled by any seasons, other than the fact that they're regarded as a pest animal. So I think that puts a whole different perspective on it. The fact that there's this pressure, I suppose, and I suppose it's good pressure as well to have a very short window where success is you can be successful. Okay.
Subject.
Everyone's gone, reflective there. So if we step it out from Sweden, tell us about hunting in Europe.
I mean, I think there's some amazing driven hunts for wild boar in Germany, which I've done for, I don't know, since I went there for the first time, which is, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years ago.
These are big animals, right? We're not talking about the Aussie pig. We're talking about a serious sized, very small donkey.
Yeah, I shot one. Like a cow. I shot one here in Sweden, which was last year. That's coming actually out on the movie we're releasing on Aimpoint's YouTube in 2 weeks, which is called Driven Hunt Sweden, which is a movie we made ourselves. And there you will see I shoot a wild boar, which was Gralek. It was 155 kilos, so it must have been like alive just around 200. That's a big wild boar.
That's a big
chunk of bacon.
Exactly. And there are quite a few of them. Of course, that big, but you have quite a few which are, let's say, full body size, not quite like 150 kilos. Germany, same size. You have some in Romania. You can have a big male boar weighing 300 kilos, which that's like a massive wild boar,
Yeah.
That's the size of a good moose, and it's a pig. So Germany has an amazing, some amazing wild boar shoots. They don't have a lot of bird hunting because you aren't allowed to release any birds anymore. There's a bit in the north where you shoot a bit of waterfowl, but then, of course, unfortunately, we had the last, let's say, 6-7 years problems with the ASP, the African swine flu, which is still active, and it's just this year it got into Croatia, which is also a big wild boar country, so they are a bit afraid of what's going to happen there. But at the same time, we see that in countries, let's say, for example, Latvia, they had it. They were one of the first because it came from Belarus, and they are now, the population is coming back again. So there are some populations who are actually regaining quite fast, which is very good news for us hunters, because wild boar hunting is just such a big part of what we do, and if that would suddenly be gone forever, that would be very sad. But it comes, and then it takes some time, and then the population gets back up. And then, of course, another topic which is very let's say intense in Europe is the wolves, because there are now so many wolves. And in Sweden, there's like down south from, let's say, everything from Stockholm down to where we are, not as south, but like 1 hour again up north from us, they have wolves, and they just destroy the hunts, because they just go species to species. They first eat the few wild living mouflons in Sweden. They are all gone now. So there were like, I don't know, 2 or 3 groups which have been here since many 100 years. And because they're not the cleverest animals, they were the first ones to get eaten. And then they go to the fellows and the rodeos. And then at last they take the wild boars and the moose, because the moose are very big and they fight. And the pigs, they also fight. So they are not as easy to get. But the whole wolf topic is a big thing in Europe. And people,
are they game? Are they a huntable species?
In some European countries they are, but in Germany, where it's a big problem, where they have thousands of them now, they are not huntable, and you go to prison if you shoot a wolf. And it's the same in Sweden. In Sweden now, I think they are starting with quotas, and there is also a law that if a wolf chases a domestic animal, so let's say a dog, even a hunting dog, and you can prove it, you can shoot a shot at it to get it away. And if it still tries to eat your dog or chase your dog, you can shoot it without being prosecuted. But if you just shoot it, you go to prison. You will get less of a sentence of shooting a person than shooting a wolf in Germany, in Sweden, and in Poland as well. And I think the hunters, they are just all arguing and saying, okay, does the wolf have to eat a baby before we can start managing them? And until now, it's not allowed. And there's even speculations that we now also have wolves in tiny Denmark, and they take a lot of domestic animals, sheep and cows and so on and so forth. And, the wolves, they don't just take one, like a lynx, for example, take one and live off that for some time. They just go in and they go completely in a blood rush and they kill 50 sheep. And they do it in the really nice way of starting eating them alive from the back. So it's really horrible. But I think the green movements, they are all about introducing and creating nature as it was 200 years ago. But I think there's a reason why they were extinct in a lot of areas, because as we developed, there was just no space for them. And the people back then, they didn't like that they ate all their cattle and their creatures, so they took them away. And now they're trying to reintroduce them. And there's speculations that they put them in trailers and drive them out and release them in other places to get the population going faster. Because in Denmark, there was a whole part of northern Germany where there were no wolves, and suddenly we started seeing wolves in Denmark. We're like, did they take a cab from the southern part of Germany up to Denmark? How did they get there? So I think this is also, I think that's going to change a lot in terms of hunting. Then there's a lot of nice bird hunting down in southern Europe.
Doesn't Romania have a similar problem with bears at the moment? Because they banned bear hunting in Romania.
They banned bear hunting
basically
4 or 5 years.
There's just horror stories of people getting eaten by grizzly or brown bears, as they call them.
Yeah,
just horror stories. People, getting eaten by brown bears all the time.
I have Romanian hunting friends who have been hunting for what used to be driven hunt for, let's say, wild boars and wolves and bears. And now wolves and bears are off limit, so it's only for the wild boars. And then the bears, they just come running. And then if these guys don't act properly, they can shoot them in self-defense. But I have a good friend, he was hunting, and then this one guy, he thought that it was just going to bugger off and tried to avoid it. But then suddenly the bear came and he tried to shoot it. He didn't manage, so it just started eating him. And the neighbor, my friend, he heard it, so he came running, and he then shot the bear while it was on top of his friend, starting just eating off his skull. So he was, teared apart. He survived, but the pictures of him look crazy. Yeah. And they now they started giving out licenses, but let's say it's ridiculous. You can shoot one bear out of 1,000 kind of thing. And when you see these guys, when they go out with thermal at night just to film, they can easily film 50, 60 bears in a tiny area at night. So they're everywhere. Yeah.
Because I was always really impressed with the boar hunting in Romania. I always thought that's where they get monster size. And
exactly.
I suppose if you got monster boars, you're going to get monster bears because they'll just that's what there's their food source. That's right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's funny how you say about that because, one of the problems that we have is with wild dogs, which are, there's a whole argument of are they dingoes, are they feral dogs, or are they wild dogs and things like that. But, similar kind of situation where the predatory nature of dogs is not like they get that where they just kill livestock. And there's many a farmer has lost a hell of a lot of sheep to wild dogs, and there's a lot of trapping and things like that. But I assume if you crank a wild dog up to a wolf, you're multiplying your problem overnight.
Exactly. Yeah.
Big animal.
So.
So, and that's all part of the rewilding idea, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think also part of some governments being like, we don't like hunting, and these animals are majestic, big animals. They shouldn't be allowed to be shot. And you can't just see it like that, because if you don't manage them, they're just gonna eat as they want of what they want. So
they
it's
want
not
to
an easy one.
Yeah, they want to reintroduce the wolf to Scotland as well. There's been talk of that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be the end of red deer up there.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, and I also think, a lot of Scottish people, there's a whole argument of the shooting business, the hunting industry. I was sitting with our CEO, Leonard. We were 3 weeks ago in Serbia visiting our distributor down there, hunting quails, which was really amazing as well. Also a magnificent hunt when they go on the flight, when they migrate from Europe down to Africa. You have them, and then at night they go down, and then early in the morning you go out with pointing dogs, and then dog stops, and then you go and you shoot the quails. They're very small birds, but super delicious. And there he talked about that there was some German politician who got elected to be like the minister of agriculture and nature and so on. And he was very green, and he was completely against hunting. And he had run his whole campaign on that he was going to ban hunting if he got elected. And then he got elected, and he got to look into the economy of the hunting industry. And he said, okay, no chance we're going to cut this off, because this is like millions and billions for so many thousand people that we can't do that. So he just left it. No. And I think it's the same discussion having in Scotland, where they are in England, UK in general, where there's a lot of antis and a lot of, let's say, big public names who are against hunting. And, these small minorities, they get such a big voice, and they don't really do the math and look at all the thousands of people who are employed by this industry. And then you have the whole government or their forests. They just want to eradicate all the red deer because it's bad for business because they eat their forest. But do you just want to have Scotland being one big Sitka plantation? I mean, how is that for like biodiversity and like nature where animals can actually live? So yeah, it's a constant fight between different opinions and what different people want.
We hear you because this is the conversation we have here all the time. It's exactly the same conversation, different location, different part, but same conversation. Like, for instance, recently they brought out this statement that, deer costs Australian economy $91 million a year. But in Victoria alone, it's estimated that deer generate $250 million. So,
and more than
from
a billion.
From a financial point of view, if the bank rang you up and said, "Look, if you give me $91, I'll give you $250," there'd be a rush on the bank. Literally, you just wouldn't. Nowhere else would you go. Okay, so what you're saying is, I'm basically $159 million up in Victoria alone. You'd probably say, so how can we get more deer in here? So how can I get the multiplier going? And that's just in Victoria alone. And that number was an Australian number, so it's not the Victorian number; it was an Australian number. But we hear it all the time. In New South Wales, is pretty much the same. So with, I'm going to ask you another about hunting because I'm just looking at the map. To be honest, I'm planning the Hunters Campfire European vacation. To be honest, so when you said into southern Europe, you're looking at birds, the wing shooting. Where were you thinking then? And literally,
so for example, as I just said, you have. We were just in Serbia now. Hunting whales, and then there is at the Danube River, which is running down between. It's touching Romania, but also Bulgaria. Mm-hmm. That delta down there has some amazing wing shooting. And then down at that region, you would also have, at the right time of year, which is roughly around now, there's a big migration of pigeons, which is also, amazing. You can stand there in the sunflower fields, and they will just be flying over them, and you can shoot big numbers of pigeons, which is... also a kind of pest control, but a very nice hunt as well. And then, Hungary and Czech Republic are old renowned countries for making some amazing pheasant shoots. I think that has maybe changed a bit because now, let's say the art of pheasant shooting is very heavily perceived as a UK English thing. So there is some amazing pheasant shoots there. They are really masters at that. But also, I would say in small Denmark, we've looked over there since many years and also perfected the art of making pheasant shoots. And then in Spain, you have partridges, so redleg partridges, which is also phenomenal. You can hunt them with pointers as a walked-up shoot, or you have these driven shoots where you stand in these small valleys and they come over the top. Super fast, which is also an amazing hunt.
And if you keep on going, you're back into Turkey and you can chase very big.
And then you can down in Morocco. You can
boar
also,
again.
yes, exactly. In Tunisia, there's a lot of people who go into Tunisia for boar hunt. There, you, as you said, you like to shoot them with the shotgun. Down in Tunisia, you can't use rifles, so there you're hunting them with slugs and shotguns. The same in Greece. In Greece, you can't use rifles for hunting, only for long-distance sport shooting. So down there, they're also hunting with slugs. Unfortunately for Aimpoint, you can't put a sight on your shotgun for hunting in Greece. So we have the S1, which is the sight made for shotgun shooting, which would have been perfect because put it on a shotgun with slugs for driven boars. It's an amazing tool. But unfortunately, in Greece, no sights on shotguns. So that's and then Romania, Bulgaria, you have some super amazing boar hunting as well. And then, if you then move further east, you come over to the Stans, but then that's all mountain hunting, which is also amazing.
Have you hunted there?
I've hunted in Kyrgyzstan for mid-Asian ibex. We also saw quite a lot of Marco Polos, but my wallet was not made for Marco Polos, so I didn't shoot them.
That's expensive. That's expensive.
No. It's very expensive. I mean, I think when I was there, you could shoot decent sized Marco Polo in Kyrgyzstan for, I don't know, 20,000 euros.
And of course, you have to avoid Ukraine at the moment. So we'd have to go. I'm just planning the trip. We'd have to go a long way, guys. We'd have to go through Turkey and up that throughway.
Yeah, exactly. You would fly. I mean, people who fly there now, you fly from Europe to Istanbul, and then Istanbul, you fly to Bishkek if you go to Kyrgyzstan, and if you want to go to Kazakhstan, then Almaty, and then from Almaty out there.
There we go.
So, yeah,
I think
amazing.
We might have to get you to help us with the proposal for the trip.
I mean, I've sold hunting trips for 8 years, so that was my previous job.
We're just getting the proposal up for the European vacation.
Exactly.
So outside of Europe, where else have you hunted?
That's it. Let's step it out. Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's step it into the new territory, your Aimpoint patch.
Exactly. So outside, I mean, Iceland is still kind of Iceland. I've been hunting for geese.
Oh yeah.
Then if we go, geese. There's an amazing migration of geese, September, October, which is, I mean, magnificent. And then you can combine it with salmon fishing. So that combination is really recommendable if you're up there anyway. And then what have I done outside? Then I said Kyrgyzstan, and then of course I was so lucky to do a bit of hunting when I was visiting you guys in Australia, and in New Zealand I've been twice. The last time actually when I combined it with a trip in March where I was also visiting you guys, I didn't do any hunting in New Zealand because it was just their rut. And everybody was just so focused and busy with it. And I mean, I was there for work, so I didn't get to do it. But I was hunting in New Zealand in 2016 when I was there on holiday. And I shot a nice tar, which a good friend of mine begged me to get back whole. So I have a whole mounted tar standing.
Really?
Well, there you go.
A lot of space. But that's, I think, about it. I haven't yet been in Africa, so that's still, I kind of avoided it when I was working with hunting because I had so many friends that I sent there, and also friends who live there, and they all said, when you first start, you get addicted, and then you don't stop coming there. And I was already hunting a lot, so I was like, okay, if I have to go to Africa several times a year as well, then it's going to be too much. So I still have an Africa trip in front of me, but I'm going to go and visit our distributor in South Africa at some point, not very far away. And then I think that's going to be it. I'm going to be hooked.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the rest of the world will be neglected from then on.
That's right.
I went to Argentina as well, actually.
Oh, for the dogs.
I've been in Argentina where I did a bit of bird shooting, and I also went with a rifle for
red stag,
black buck and axis.
The red stags?
No, I still have to go to Patagonia to shoot red stags. I have a very good friend who's invited me over there. They have an estate where they shoot up in the Patagonian mountains, where they shoot beautiful red stags, which sounds unbelievable.
Yeah.
But that's also to come.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's hunted there, and he's got a number of big red stag trophies. They're huge.
Yeah. Terra del Fuego.
Now, we heard that you were due back over here in, did you say January?
I think, yes. I think the plan is that Eric and I, we're going to be there the 2 midweeks of January. That's what we're trying to plan.
Tough time of year.
Very, very hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
we
But that's
do
what fits
sometimes
in our
hunt
schedule.
through that time of the year, but it's usually pretty hard hunting, to be honest.
Do a pilliga
Yeah.
trip.
That's
Yeah.
it. Pilliga trips, and if you want to experience rough Aussie hunting, Pilliga in January is about as rough
A
as it's going to
million
get.
wild acres of
That's right.
public land.
Huge chunk of public land full of goats, but it's 35 degrees plus, and there's no water in there.
Heat man.
Well, then you don't. If you're not a heat man, then you don't want to go.
I'm a Viking.
Yeah,
Everything
well.
above 22 degrees, I'm dying.
Yeah, that's not the place. That's not the place then to get acclimatized.
No.
That is not the place to get acclimatized.
Oh.
I've
Never mind.
probably got heat stroke there. Well, I got close to heat stroke there a couple of times. It's very hot.
It's cooking.
Fantastic. It's an amazing place, huge, empty, completely self-sufficient, but hot, very, very hot. And if it's the wrong time, and also it's strange enough, incredibly violent storms come through there too.
Yeah,
Summer storms come through there as well. So it's a weird place.
Yeah, that's good.
We're selling it to them.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Talk
look,
about
you've been
snakes.
Well, I've never seen a snake Pilliga. They're just too tired. It's too hot to go out.
Yeah. Oh well. We'll plan a pilliga trip for you.
I
Let us
think
know if
so.
you're up for
That sounds amazing.
Mm.
I hate snakes and heat, so it's just my thing.
it. Let's do it. Sounds like fun. We'll see if we can break Carl.
For sure.
Send
All
me
right.
back. Yeah.
Anything else, Mark?
No, I'm about. I've planned our trip. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate
I've got the European vacation already in my mind. We just got to find the appropriate backers, but we're gonna have some fun.
Should be
So
right.
that's about it for me.
I thought we're organising a tag along with Carl for a year tour. That sounds like a lot of fun. The chaos.
I'm thinking
I can
more like a
imagine
Contiki, the Contiki, like 30 different huntings in 22 days across 45 nations or something like that.
That's
Today,
very nice.
Talk about the slam.
That's it. Like,
Oh, yeah, taking it to a level. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we'll keep planning that, Mark. We'll see how we go.
Oh, yeah, sounds like a good idea to me. Yeah. So I think I've exhausted Carl. Anything from your good self, Carl? You want to add to the conversation, or have we exhausted you?
No. It's perfect. I mean, I live off speaking, so for me, it's perfectly fine.
Been really good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Mate,
Perfect.
we've
Yeah.
really appreciated your time. I know it's midday where you are, and you're I suppose supposedly at work.
Exactly. Yeah, we have a lot going on. So we have two events simultaneously. So we have something we call Education Days, which is like we invite all our distributors, and they come, one or two from each country, and they are now here this week doing training. So we train them in all our products. They came Monday, and they are leaving Thursday. And at the same time, our fire control system, the big military equipment we make, they are also having some showcase days right these days. And then on Monday, we have something we call Aimpoint Shooting Academy. So basically, it's we did it 6 years ago. Back then, it was called Wild Boar Fever Academy, together with the Wild Boar Fever movies. But now we call it Aimpoint Shooting Academy. So there was a period of, I think, 2 months people could sign up. And there were like 7,000 people who signed up, and we've chosen the 20 best. They're all arriving on Monday.
Wow.
And then we have from Monday to Friday where we train them and assess them. And then out of those 20 winners, we're going to pick 2 winners, and they're going to win being in one of our next hunting movies. They're going to win a Sako rifle, ammunition, Hercula clothing, pelter, ear protection, of course, an Aimpoint. So that's happening the whole next week. We have 20 people from all around the world that are going to come and be trained and assessed, and then we pick the 2 best next Thursday, and they are then going to win a spot on one of our hunts in October. So there's a lot of planning for that as well.
I was going to ask you
What
about
I heard
that.
was you can win a spot on one of their hunts.
Exactly. So that's what they're competing for.
How do we enter that?
I saw it on social media, and I was going to ask you about it. Yeah.
So basically, it was just on all our social media, there was a lot of information about that. You follow the link, you came into our webpage, and then you signed up by just giving your name. And then you had to do a written part where you had to tell us why you were the ones to be chosen. And out of those 7,000, we then chose the ones we thought were the 20 best. And they are then going to come. So, but there's a lot of people who said, why didn't I get chosen? I was like, we only were able to choose 20.
That's right.
So
look out for that next year.
I saw it, as I said, I saw it had been, it'd been closed and the people have been picked. So, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. We'll call it a wrap.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you very much.
An awesome couple of hours. Like really, really interesting stuff. So looking forward to seeing you back over here for sure. Hopefully we can catch up on your next tour.
Yes.
We will try and get you to the Pilliga. I'm not sure if we'll make it happen. Tony, where are you traveling to, Melbourne or Sydney?
That's all very early stages. So I think we're going to travel to, of course, Melbourne first, and then hopefully we will plan a tour with Beretta to cover as much as the small, beautiful country of Australia as we can, but only having 2 weeks. Exactly, like last time. So trying to pack in as many different locations in those 2 weeks as possible. We don't need to sleep a lot, but we just want to educate as many as possible. And when we do the whole trip over there, we want it to be as effective as possible. So that's the plan.
Awesome. All right. Mark?
No, that's it. I was going to say, not to cast any aspersions, but I like it how the first time you visit Australia, the first place you went to was Hillcrest. I thought it was pretty good.
Welcome to town.
Where are we exactly?
But I went to, I was also in a town called Tamworth.
Tamworth, yeah.
Tamworth.
Yeah. Yes. I went to a lot of very far away places from anything else. At least the people who were there said, this is not a place normal people would go to if they don't live here. So, but I was like, oh, it's nice to be here. I get to see a bit of everything.
That's it.
Very close to one of our favourite hunting spots, mate.
That is.
It is.
Very close.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks very much, mate. I really appreciate your time, as we said, and it's been great to help plan our trip, coming our European vacation. So we've enjoyed that information a lot, and as I said, I've been following the map, and it was great to talk to you again. And I really hope to catch up with you in January, and I reckon we'll try and I'll see if we can get Scott to give you a day off or something like that. We'll try and figure out something.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl.
Mate.
Really appreciate it.
Later.
See you, mate.
Okay.
Perfect.
See you later.
See you.